Hello and welcome.
All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us for day 5. That was 10. Day 5 of Building Your Brand, Colorful Cohesion with the wonderful and amazing Jess Langley, brought to you by Operation Arts, Saz Factory, and sponsored by the Maryland State Art Council. Thank you, MSAC, for making this all possible. We really, truly appreciate you. This is our 5th event in our GEWARTS series, which is Global Entrepreneurship Week Arts. GEW was created to make it easier for anyone, anywhere to get a business started. It covers over 200 countries, 20,000 partners, 40,000 activities, and 10 million people. We started GEWARTS in 2019 to give artists the same opportunities as all these other businesses. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my business partner, my right-hand lady, my full-on brain, Ms. China May.
Thank you for the introduction, Renee. To tell you a little bit about our organization, we started Operation Arts in 2018 and officially became a nonprofit in 2020. Our mission is to develop the creative economy, and our organization encourages better business practices and economic growth for all. We lay the foundation for profitable collaborative relationships between artists, businesses, and the community by streamlining opportunities. We create financial stability for artists by providing them with the resources to help them succeed. Our programming consists of local art staging, professional development events, public art, marketing support, resource sharing, opportunity cultivation, career training, and internships. And again, I just want to thank Maryland State's Art Council for supporting our budding artist community. And without further ado, I want to introduce you to our partner, Saz Ross.
Hey, everybody. I see some familiar faces here today. Really excited about that. Just as a formal introduction, my name is Saz. I'm an illustrator, speaker, and educator here in Baltimore City. And I have been able to work closely with Maryland State Arts Council to provide you with a week-long series of wonderful workshops. I did mention this in the previous sessions, but we are using a beautiful platform called Padlet to post all of the links and work that we've been doing throughout the week. So what I'm going to do very quickly is go through Padlet and highlight today's session and speaker, who is Jess Langley. We are going to go into that shortly, so just check the chat really quick and click on that Padlet link. I'm going to share screen and show you some of the features of Padlet before we begin. Keep in mind that today is the last day of our session, and we do have a goodie bag giveaway filled with beautiful, free, discounted items from all of the artists that have presented this week. We have brand audits, coaching, product discounts. It's jam-packed with awesome stuff that you can use at your own leisure. So looking at the Padlet, you should be able to see my screen. You'll see that under day 5, you'll see all the content from Jess's session. If you feel like interacting at a point, posting work of your own to be looked at for a brand audit, you can do that today. We will have this little plus sign at the bottom of each column. Give it a click, and you can write down your name. Subject would be anything that you want written about the content you post. And then you have 2 icons that will probably be the most useful: the upload green icon and the add a link icon, which I know that some of you here have already used. Without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce to you the lovely Jess Langley. She is a muralist. She is a pricing coach and just an incredible person to know here in Baltimore. She has done wonderful work in the community. And I have to say, she's just one of the most gifted people when it comes to building cohesion in your brand and your message and really targeting your niche. So without further ado, Jess Langley.
Thank you so much, Saz. And thank you, China and Renee, for having me here. And I'm just excited for everyone who is here live and who's going to watch the recording. And I will start sharing my screen and we can get into it. So today you all are here to discuss building a brand, colorful cohesion. And I will introduce myself right after we talk about what we're going to talk about today. So building a brand that matches you and your energy is really important, and having your marketing feel cohesive and consistent is the next level of that. So that's really what we're going to get into. And we're going to learn about what a brand really is, go through some examples, and then work through your brand values, color palette, and fonts to use across your marketing platforms. So a lot of this presentation is going to be a workshop. And if there's some extra time left over, we can dive into your websites, your social media. We can really like do kind of a live interaction to look at your current brand. So first, who am I? As Saz mentioned, my name is Jess Langley. I am a graphic designer and self-taught muralist. I'm also a mindset and pricing coach for creative entrepreneurs. I love color and colorful language. I will try to not do that because this is going on YouTube and public television. But that's really the main thing in both of my businesses that kind of ties everything together for me. I just think that color is just makes me happy and makes people happy and kind of is inspiring and empowering. So that's also kind of why we get to talk about color today. I'm a dog and cat mom. I have 2 dogs and a cat. And then there's some personality things on here as well that, you know, just to kind of get more well acquainted and connected. If at any time you want to take screenshots, you are welcome to. Obviously, the recording will be up, but I just want to let you all know that. So again, I run 2 distinct businesses, and they're focused on bringing color celebration and business strategy to brands, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits so they can make a bigger impact. So my design and mural studio is White Coffee Creative, and you can see my little blurb there. And then my coaching business, where I'm a mindset and pricing coach, is called The Colorful Jess. So I balance both of those businesses. They both have very unique brands. This is actually the first time I am publicly sharing the new brand for White Coffee Creative, so you all get to see that first, which is exciting. Really entering into a new phase of that business. And then just so you all know that I am legit, I am sharing some of the work that I've done over the past 5.5 years in my business. So I've worked with I've done a lot of branding, I've done a lot of print design, I've worked with creatives, nonprofits, wellness companies, you know, beer and mead companies, just a wide variety. And then I also paint murals. So those of you who are in Baltimore, you probably have seen some of my work or at least heard about it or seen it on Instagram. I have a really fun Dear Baltimore mural series, which is slowly expanding. But I've worked with a lot of really cool clients as well. So throughout all of it, I have really focused on their brand and how to really push that across, unless it's more of a like art piece, like some of these others. So that has been a lot of fun, and that has really like developed my expertise and my experience in understanding branding and marketing and how to use that across your social media, website, all of those things. So first I want to dive into what is a brand. A brand is not just a logo, and I want to make that really clear. So some of us here probably have a logo or we have some things put together, but maybe we don't have it all in a really streamlined, easy to reference way. So we're going to dive into that today. So a brand is the way a company makes you feel. It is a system of visuals, messaging, strategy, and tone. And so really kind of seeing how it all comes together. And I'm going to show you, this is my new brand. So I'm showing you a lot of visuals here. You can see that there's not just one logo, but it is in fact a collection of logos, visuals, elements. I have messaging, you know, I have a color system, I have typography, I have some icons and elements that create patterns. Some of my other elements are for like actual social media graphics, so the way that I layer things in those. And it all really comes together and feels really consistent, mostly because of color and typography. And then this presentation really shows off my coaching brand, The Colorful Jess. So I'm really using that same, for The Colorful Jess, I'm using the same color palette, fonts, logos, and elements so that you can really see how these visuals create consistency and cohesion. And this creates brand recognition, which combined with my messaging builds connection over time. And I think we all know some really popular brands that have done that. Off the bat, I'm thinking of Nike, Starbucks, Target. Like, you can recognize those logos from a mile away, but you also know how the brand feels and how it makes you feel as well. And that's because of consistency more than anything. So let's get into the workshop. Okay, so let's get colorful. So my goal for you is to walk away from this workshop with defined brand values, a color palette and the meaning behind it, and then fonts for your brand. So we are basically going to break into a few like 10-minute sessions, and I'll give you some information beforehand and kind of show you some things, and then you get to go off and kind of work on your own. And if at any point you have questions, you are welcome to turn on your mic, unmute yourself, and ask those. If at any point you just want some feedback or you want to talk through something, again, either that or in the chat. So let's dive into your brand values. These are actually a lot more fun than they may seem. So these are a set of words that encompass your foundational beliefs as a business. And what we're going to use those for is to kind of define, like, what kind of typography are we going for, right? So if you have a really, like, maybe one of your brand values is knowledge, maybe you are like a copywriter or something, right? So you want your people to know, your clients to know that you're super knowledgeable, like you're on top of your stuff. Maybe you're going to use a color that represents that, and you're going to use some typography that feels a little bit more like traditional rather than super modern. But maybe if your word is one of your brand values is very like hip and cool and those kinds of words, then you're going to want to use a more modern or a funky font. So the first task is going to be literally writing out a list of words that feel like your brand. And if you don't like, if maybe your brand is just a personal brand right now, I would love to actually in the chat have you all tell me like what you do, or you are welcome to unmute yourself. Tell me what you do and kind of what your business or your personal brand is about. And we can kind of like workshop this on the fly. So let's take like the next like 10 to 15 minutes to kind of talk about that. So who wants to go first or share first? Yes.
Hi, my name is Kelsey. I'm a sculptor and I made a business around sculpting. And then it turned into a workshop business. So I go around different art centers, museums, and let me just show you one of them. I have a kind of like a niche in fantastical creatures, like imaginary creatures. So this is like my rainbow panda fairy that I'm working on right now. And I recently started to 3D print them, and then I want to take these 3D prints and mold them and then make a bunch of, they're all over there, but I have like different paintings I put on them. So I'm trying to learn, I'm at the very beginning of this, how to like package it. I need help with branding because my brand is all about fun, very similar to yours. I love color. It's all about fun. It's all about imagination, art, basically anything that comes out of your head, just making it friendly and cute. They're all very happy and smiley. So I kind of forgot the question, but that's what
No, that is great. That's great for us to hear about your business. And those are beautiful. I feel like all of us had shocked faces seeing those.
Thanks.
Very cool and very, to your point, very niche, which is just amazing to see, something so different. So what do you want to kind of, I mean, if you're open to it, we can literally workshop this for each of you because there's not that many here. So we can just kind of talk it through for each person. So if you want to think about like a quick list of words, we can kind of start writing those down. And the other people who are in here, please feel free to, like, as you just saw her stuff, like write it in the chat. Yes. And what is your brand called?
Okay, I was trying to come up with a name, And for a couple like months, I used the name Scatterbrain Art because if you knew me, that's just right on the money. But then my boyfriend was saying that you are the thing that's special. Like you're the one who's doing all the stuff. So you just name it after yourself. He was saying like that's better for artists. So now I just call it Kelsey Joyce Art.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think that everyone goes a different route with that. I have a really popular name, like even my middle name, and it was already taken. So that wasn't even an option. But
Yeah.
if that works for you, then yeah. And so when I hear Kelsey Joyce Art, I also hear that it's part of you. So what's cool about that is you really get to infuse a lot of your personality into it. And even if it wasn't, right? Like my White Coffee creative brand is very much me as well, but it gets to be even more a part of you because it's less about the client, right? It's like they're buying you, they're buying a product of you. So like based off of that note, like what kind of values do you think you have for your business? And let me pull up, I'm not going to show you all, but I will read off some of mine as well, just to give everyone an example. But just kind of talking it through, what kind of things come to mind for you?
Definitely like honesty. Like I don't do anything that I don't agree with. Like I wouldn't put my work in a store whose values I couldn't align with. So I always go for everything I've done so far has just been word of mouth, like me going out. I go to a lot of functions on purpose, like with the mindset to network and be like, hi, who are you? Like, I do this. Like, do you want to do something? So all my connections so far have been in person. And I was afraid that maybe using my name, it doesn't really translate the imagery that I want. So I was thinking maybe I should change my name to be something more fantastical, like creative. But then I have so much trouble coming up with the name because everyone already has a name that I wanted. So it's really hard coming up with the name.
Names are very hard, and a lot of them are taken. I follow, and this is a resource tip for you all. I'm on Sprout Laws. It's sproutlaw.com. She offers contracts and she does a lot of like trademarking and that kind of stuff for business owners, specifically like small business owners. And she's amazing. And her newsletters are fantastic. And she talks about how basically so many names are taken that now a lot of people are going to different languages. So like if there was something in your own culture, but then you also, of course, want to make sure that people know what it is and how to pronounce it, right? Because that's always the hardest thing too. I think that Kelsey Joyce Art can, there's only so far that a name can get you. Thank you, Renee, for putting that in the chat. So I think that Kelsey Joyce Art can be what it is, and then you can really pump up that personality through your visuals, your photography, your brand values, your messaging. Like that's the point of a brand, right? Like it lives under this, but that is not the only thing. So that's kind of cool. So I love honesty. I also hear community, right? Like sometimes these words feel very typical, but that's okay because they're like a starting point. So like I'll tell you all what my brand values, and really it's like what drives your brand's culture and the messaging and all those different things. So for me, mine focuses on freedom, which is very much like authenticity, equity, equality, sharing your truth, right? Like not like holding yourself back. Transparency, which is very about like meaning, awareness, intentionality, celebration, colorfulness, empowerment. I have disruptive because it's a little like quirky and weird and unconventional at times. And that might be really good for your brand, right? Because you are doing something so different. I also have impact and environmentally friendly, and then social justice and acceptance. So like all of those things basically drive how I come across in my brand, in my social media, on my website, the colors that I use, like all of that connects. So let's come up with a list of like 6 different words. And then I want you all to remember, and I want to do this with everyone if you all are open to it. So I want you all to remember that this doesn't have to be perfect, that this is 2-hour workshop. I spent weeks on mine, right? Like this is not, you get to have time after this workshop to really sit with everything and think it through and be like, does this actually work or does it not? And you don't have to necessarily overthink it, but the goal here is that it lasts. So you don't have to keep revisiting it over and over. You're not changing your colors every 3 months. Like you get to just have something. And that's like one thing off of your to-do list that's done. That's kind of the goal from this workshop. So based off of that, let's come up with 6 quick words, and we can just use those as a starting point today. So I heard from you, honesty, community. Does anyone else have any recommendations or things that they heard? I would say color. I think color can be one. Yeah. Also thinking about how your brand makes people feel can be something to think about, right? Like, why do people choose that to put in their homes? Are they artsy? Can that be one? Like, you're really like supporting artists and like, I can see honesty, but also almost like freedom of expression. So
They're
these don't
very
have to just be one word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I'm gonna write them all down.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you want me to do a little background music to give people like 4 minutes to do this or whatever? Or did you want to walk
Yeah,
through it?
let's do that. And then we can go through each person's and kind of talk it through more in depth.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
All right, let's come back at 9:30.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah, slow down at the perfect time. There we go.
Look at that. Okay, so who wants to go next? I see you.
Hi, I'm Erin. Pronounce she, her, and my business name is Janessa Holloway. I am a singer of pop and R&B music with a little bit of hip hop inspired, jazz inspired influences. So I was thinking about this, and this is a really interesting thing to think about, the brand and how it all connects and is how it's cohesive, right? So I thought for me, I sort of have this like bubbly personality sometimes. So I'm bubbly at times, but I'm also very moody. So I was thinking like a city girl meets small hometown roots, homegrown, matte, vibrant. There was sort of this on my link tree. There's this like sort of glossy background of this matte sort of glossy background, sort of like a textured glass that I like. So I wanted to try to keep something like that. But I also really like, I don't know if this is like a brand, but like Gifted. And I want my site and the different features and the widgets to say Gifted, that they're not just different little links that I could have. Like I want it to be a bit, you can interact with stuff. So yeah, I feel like I'm a bit chatty when it comes to that, but yeah.
I think chatty can be one of them, right? Like you're very warm, probably approachable. I'm kind of getting that vibe, but also expressive. And if gifted is the word that works for you, that's great. I could also see unique, both of those, right? Like you want to stand out. And I also kind of hear this, what it could boil down to is balance, but I feel like balance isn't the right word. This is also where I look up synonyms a lot, or I just type in balance synonym and I look up all the things. But I hear you have almost these like opposite things, right? You're bubbly, but you're moody. So like how can we kind of identify that? Or having both of those exist can work. It might feel like, bubbly could be like, and I'm just going to go off the cuff. This doesn't mean this is what you have to do. Hot pink, right? Bubblegum pink versus moody is like a deep, like purple night sky, right? Like you have that balance there.
Yeah, I was thinking that there's this definite, when I think of like, when I think of my headshot or whatever, it's definitely like vibrant, maybe a pastel, but the sort of background, not for my headshot, but for like my website, it's sort of like matte, it's sort of chill, it's sort of like grounds you in a bit.
Yeah, I hear like it's inviting.
Yeah.
Right? They're like called in maybe by the vibrancy, and then they're like, oh, there's actually depth here.
Yeah.
This is like a whole person.
Yeah.
So that's a really good list. So like read it back to me now that we're and like cross stuff out, put new words, like think you can have like 10 different words for one thing if you need, and then you can kind of narrow it down.
I love this sort of bubblegum. So there's this sort of genre, and the type of music that I do is kind of bubblegum pop and kind of leaning towards that K-pop little aesthetic. And so I love the bubblegum, but I'm not sure about the pink. It'll be bubblegum. But like even today, like I chose all this different, like yellow. I'm gonna wear yellow. I'm gonna be intentional about wearing yellow. So
and I see your nails, right?
yeah.
Right.
So I'm thinking bubblegum, unique, inviting, yet depth. That was just, I feel like that captured me to a core.
Yeah.
Like people gravitate towards me sometimes, and then they realize, oh, she has a little bit of depth to her.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, modern, gifted, definitely gifted, bubbly and moody. I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to work that around, figure
Right.
out about that, but
And they
definitely,
can both be in there. They can
yeah,
both be in there. Bubbly, I
true.
could also see as vibrant. I could see those being kind of similar.
Mhm.
But it sounds like you have a really good list. So then when we get into the colors, we can start looking at color psychology and strategy, and we can talk about some of those things. So how does it feel right now? Do you
It
feel
feels
like you're in a good
great.
place? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. Good. Awesome.
Great.
Let me go through. So it looks like the last person put theirs in the chat. They are in a noisy place. So let me just read it out loud. So these are the ones I want to be in the future, but don't think my brand possesses now. And that's okay. I think that it's good to have these as goals and for kind of what you want to encompass. And we would love to hear what your business is called and kind of what you offer as well. So we have introspective, quirky, vibrant, dreamy grunge, provides social commentary in a beautiful way. That's beautiful. I'm getting a really nice image of what your business could be. And then girl crush. This is really cool. So I would love to hear more about that if you can share in the chat before we move on. And again, I just want to remind all three of you that you can always go back and change these, adjust these, tweak them later. But the goal is to kind of have them to refer back to, because we're going to use them today for colors and fonts, but also thinking about your website design, how that looks. Like, are you coming across as gifted and expressive and vibrant, right? Are you coming across as introspective? What kind of messaging and language can you use? And this is really what, as a brand designer, what we do when we say brand strategy, which feels like a very weird, like you're like, what does that even mean? And it's essentially like a really deep dive into who your business is, so that it creates a really solid foundation for the actual visuals. Okay, so they say, I'm an author, but I dabble in music, animation, and filmmaking. But most of my work, except for music, involves talking on social issues, sometimes in subtle ways. I love that. That's so cool. It sounds like there's a lot going on, and yet it all has this very central purpose and impact. And I can really see that being kind of brought through these brand values and the colors and the fonts. Also, everyone, feel free to drop your socials, your websites, anything that you want to. I would love to follow you all, and also just so that we can look at it as well later. So now that we all have a really good foundation, let's get into colors. So this is obviously my favorite part. And I want to talk a little bit before we move into the actual workshop portion of how to choose colors. And really, I just want to, one of the biggest things that I talk about as a mindset and pricing coach is that I can tell you one way, you can hear all this advice online, hearing all these different opinions. At the end of the day, it's about what feels good to you. I'm going to provide you this base and this setup and these tools, and then you get to pick and choose what works best for you. So one thing I want to talk about a little bit is, we had mentioned brand strategy, and some of the things, let me pull up my brand strategy because I think it could be really interesting. So I want to make sure, can you all see this? Okay, this is a really intense document, so we're not going to go through everything, but I'm just going to kind of skim through it. So essentially, in my brand strategy, I have 7 different parts, right? So I have foundations, your audience. I don't think I did competitor research. This is a working document. Brand positioning, brand personality, messaging, and creative direction. So the goal is using this to bounce off of. So in the brand foundations, you're really talking about your brand, your goals, your purpose, your values, right? So like I have a bunch of this in there. I also think it's really fun to pull a quote because that can be really cool. And so you're using this, right? Like I'm diving into my audience. I'm diving into who they are as a personality, right? Like this is really good for service-based people, but it's also really good for like, you know, as a singer, like you're like, well, who am I actually talking to? Who am I singing to? Who's coming to my shows or listening to them online? As a sculptor, you're like, well, who is buying these things? And then as an author, it's like, who's reading my stuff? Who's engaging with my content? There's also some really fun things called brand archetypes that you can dive into. So these are like all things, right? There's like a ton of stuff. So the reason that I say this is because you can choose your colors based off like, I like pink, right? And you're like, okay, cool. But it's important to remember that if pink doesn't fit with your brand strategy, maybe it's not a good fit for this. Like your brand and your business does not have to be every single part of your personality, which I think is probably something I struggle with a little bit personally, because I want to be like, I like dogs, I like Jeeps, I like outdoors, I like the city, I like coffee, and I want to throw it all in. But you don't have to. So that's just something to think about. And like for me, you can actually see, I ended up doing this ginormous, these are called stylescapes, and they are inspiration boards. And then from there, I was able to choose my color palette. So we can kind of we're going to dive into that. But I just want to really highlight, like, I have a lot of clients who have more personal brands, and it's really easy to get into the vibe of like, well, you know, I like blue or I like purple. And so that is exactly what needs to be on there. And remembering that one, there are many different hues and shades of each color, and they can communicate different things. And then also knowing that, you know, when you have a personal brand, yes, that can make sense. And also just making sure that it makes sense, right? Like if you were vibrant, this isn't going to be your main color. This like very boring tan, right? Like you would be like, I'm going to go electric lime green. Like that's super cool. So those are like some things to think about. And then when it comes to color psychology, so there's actually been some really interesting, I wouldn't say controversy, but something to consider is color psychology is really based off of where you are in the world, right? So like different cultures look at colors very differently. When you think of like not only their artwork, but you think of what they wear, their traditions. I feel like I might be getting this wrong, but like in somewhere like in Italy, it's like really bad luck to wear like blue underwear on New Year's. So they don't use blue in a lot of their stuff. And I may totally be getting that off base, but I saw that on TikTok and I thought that was really interesting. So like these are things that, you know, culturally speaking, us who are in America, we may have a very different color psychology than those in other parts of the world. And that's also something to consider when you are thinking about who your audience is. So both who you are as a person, what's your background, where do you come from? You know, look at how many brands in Maryland have Maryland flags in them, and they use the Maryland colors. And I have many friends from other states who are like, I hate those colors. Please never put them together. Why is this flag so prominent everywhere? So it's, you know, that can be like something kind of fun to think about. But if you do choose to pull inspiration from color psychology, there's a lot of really good information online. There's a lot of stuff about brands. So like, I'm just going to kind of go through this a little bit and, you know, write down anything that resonates with you. And then I also, a lot of times, am just Googling stuff. So I'll be like, purple meaning, right? And then you look into it and you're like, oh, purple has all these different meanings. And that can really pull into your strategy and your color selections and the meanings. So red, some of the things that red can really pull in is like action, aggression, attention, beginnings, power, vibrancy, but also like war and blood and courage and danger, right? Red is also a really common color for food. So like McDonald's uses like red and yellow, and that can create like hunger, which is kind of interesting. So color has a lot of power, but it is really about how your audience is perceiving it and their background. And again, knowing it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to go through just a few of the colors. The book that I'm pulling these from is actually called Color, Form, and Magic. Another book, and I do have these resources listed out in this presentation if you all want to screenshot that and check them out, is called The Secret Lives of Colors. And colors is spelled with a U, like the British way. And that's a really cool book because it actually dives into the history of things. So like, where did blue come from? When did green get here? You know, because like there were like hundreds of years ago, certain colors just didn't exist because we didn't have the materials and supplies to create them. So that's something to consider. Orange can mean adaptability, confidence, creativity, encouragement, energy, fertility, friendly, fun, playful, happiness, pleasure, social, success, warmth, those kinds of things. Yellow can mean anxiety, caution, confidence, determination. Gold, illumination, optimism, sunshine, sense of self. Green is abundance, balance, earth, envy, growth, harmony, jealousy, love, luck, nature, prosperity, rest, and wealth. You know, when I think of green, obviously a lot of eco-friendly companies come to mind. And that's something that has been interesting as well, is I know a lot of brand designers who really focus on eco-friendly companies, and a way to stand out is to not use green. So that's something else to consider, is like looking at research, looking at who else is in the market, what are colors that maybe they're using a lot of, versus how can you kind of stand out in that way too, if that's part of what you want to be. Blue is calm, cleanse, communication, flow, healing, intellect, logic, reflection, sound, sadness, trust, understanding. The biggest thing that I always connect with blue is trust, because a lot of insurance companies use that color, like a lot. If you end up looking that up, you can see, you know, a lot of blue examples out there. Purple is creativity, honor, imagination, inspiration, luxury, magic, mystery, power, royalty, spiritual awareness, thought, and wisdom. Pink is affection, calm, cheerful, comfort, compassionate, empathy, feisty, gentleness, intensity, romance, sensitivity, softness, sweetness. Brown is comfort, dependable, earth, fertility, grounding, hard work, humility, nature, organic, practicality, reliability, stability, structure, right? Warmth. White is cleanliness, coldness, consciousness, ghosts, innocence, isolation, peace, spirituality, surrender, transcendence, truth. And black is authority, confidence, creation, elegance, formality, glamour, protection, rebellion, seriousness, sophistication, space, and substance. So hopefully some of those kind of resonated with you. And again, it can very much be, you know, what is standing out the most, and then also what is your own personal relationship with some of those colors. Like if you wear yellow a lot, right, like that gets to be a part of your color scheme, but like what shade really communicates what you want to come across. Okay, so now we get to pick our colors. And just kind of thinking about, so I'm going to show you all some inspiration for where to find color palettes specifically. And then I want you to really focus on like 3 main colors. So really those are going to be main backgrounds, text colors, you know, maybe that's in your logo if you have that, or if you plan to do that one day. Really thinking of like, they can be bright, they can be contrasty, like kind of what are the like maybe 3 to 4 colors that really make sense. And again, this is super loose, so you may have 4 colors that you use, right? You may have like 2 different shades of blue and a bright green and a bright pink, and those might work for you. I typically like to create a palette of 6 to 10 colors when designing a brand's visuals. And I always include a few accent colors and then some neutrals. So you want to have that like kind of what's a more plain background, or what's a really dark like navy or dark purple or dark like charcoal gray. Or maybe it's like pure black, you know, that kind of works for your brand, that really kind of creates that pop and that like groundedness. And then thinking about what these colors will look like on your social media graphics, your business cards, your website, your merch, like what kind of t-shirt colors are you going to have if you want that? What does like your postcard backgrounds look like? All of those different things. And this is kind of more nitty gritty, but it's important to choose colors that work in RGB and CMYK. And if you aren't familiar with those, RGB stands for red, green, blue, and it's essentially what we see digitally. So those colors typically can be a lot brighter. And then CMYK is for printing and like tangible things, like in person. So that is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And typically that's what a printer would use. So one of the things that I actually came across, which is funny because I am a brand designer, but it happens. I'm using a really bright cobalt blue in my brand and I love it and I don't want to give it up. But when it's printed, it can never be that rich. So it's something to consider, that sometimes some of those colors might be a little bit toned down. And you may be able to find things like a t-shirt that's in a really royal blue, but you won't really ever get that on paper. So again, for things like your business cards and such. Okay, so I have a few like kind of where to find inspiration, and I'm going to switch over my screen to share that. So let me know if you all can see this. Okay, so this is a really cool site. It is color.halepixel.com. I can put it in the chat. And this, you literally kind of mouse over it. Why is it not working? There we go. So you can mouse over it. You can also just kind of press the space button, or just like kind of click, and it can create a palette of up to, I don't know, actually it looks like it creates a lot. But what's cool is that I'm pretty sure you can, yeah, once you're in it, you can just kind of move stuff around. So that can be really fun to, like, let's say you're, I don't know, this is kind of a palette in itself. This is very purple. But let's say you're like, I don't want that one. So then you go and you can choose another one, and then you can kind of like keep switching it around. So this is fun. And this number is going to be the number. So like if you use Canva, if you use any kind of like graphic or on your website, this is called a hex code. And it's essentially 6 numbers and letters afterwards. And then it starts with this little like hashtag symbol. And this is basically like you would want to save this and make sure that you know this. So instead of having like an RGB value, which is like red, green, blue is a specific number, you could just use this in replacement for all of your digital needs. But you would want to make sure that you have easy access to this, and that this is in a brand guide or in your notes app or just somewhere that like lives, so that you can easily copy and paste it at all times. So that is one site. Here is another site. It's coolers.co. So this one is not quite as free, so it can only generate so much. But what's really fun about this one is you can just press the space bar and it literally creates palettes for you. So these could be a really good place to start. And then kind of you could take these numbers and pull them into here if you wanted to grab a bunch more. So that can be kind of fun. You can see how drastically different like some of their palettes are and just how quickly you can move through it. And then of course you can save it. You're like, I really like that color. Let's see what else they can come up with, right? And I really like this color. So then you like kind of start to see. So that can be really fun. And then last, I like to go on Pinterest and I like to just look up color palettes. And these can be awesome. You know, sometimes like Pantone is a very, this is for very specific printing processes. This is designer language, essentially. It's a very specific like fan deck that people buy. So you don't typically need this. And it can be kind of hard, but you could always just like literally Google Pantone 5487U and get the hex codes and the CMYK and such. But these can be really fun to look at because you're like, oh, this is super cool. And if you don't have, like, I use Adobe programs, so I can very easily do like a color dropper and be like, okay, I know what this color is. There are a lot of like Google Chrome extensions and such along those lines that have those capabilities if you're not in those programs. So you could literally just be, I think they're, I mean, literally they just like pop up here. If you have, if you use a different browser, I'm sure that that exists too. And you can just literally like color drop from your screen. So as you're looking, and actually one of the first iterations of my brand for White Coffee Creative, I literally took a screenshot of something and I was like, I love these colors. And I kind of pulled my colors from that. So if you have a photo that works really well, that can be something to think about too. But like, here's kind of fun, right? Like, so these are immediately, they're like, okay, these are colors and like the meanings behind them. And the other really fun part of colors is you can come up with names. So I just think that that's so much fun. Let me pull up so like for my color palette, my color names are Cobalt, Flamingo, Shirley Temple, Electric Lime, Alpine Teal, Moonstone, Sunflower, and Night Sky. And that, like, don't put pressure on it, right? Like if you just want to make them super simple. But that can be kind of fun to further pull in those brand values, further pull in the meaning behind your business. Like for me, like I am very rooted in Baltimore, right? So I was like, flamingo, like that makes sense. I love Shirley Temples and I have a very playful vibe. So like that makes sense. So that can be kind of fun to think about. So let's, Renee, do you want to maybe put like 10 minutes? We can break for 10 minutes and you all can start playing around with colors and using these websites and then kind of choose some palettes and save them somewhere. And you can put on music, Renee, if we want.
Good copy.
Cool.
10 minutes. We'll come back at what is that? 10:07?
Yes.
All right.
And if anyone has any questions, drop them in the chat and I will answer them.
10:07. We are coming back in. I'm going to pass it back over to the wonderful Miss Langley here.
Awesome. So I'm going to pull up the Padlet. And I see one Uploaded so far. Does anyone need help uploading that or to go through how to do so? Feel free to unmute yourself or chat.
I know how to do it. I just needed more time.
Okay. Does anyone need another 5 minutes? Yeah. Okay. Let's do another 5 minutes.
That's totally fine.
That's totally fine. We got time.
Thanks, guys.
All righty, everybody. It is 10:15. So
How we feeling? I see 2 in here. Anyone else want to upload theirs? And it's okay if it's not done. It's okay if we just have, 3 colors. And we can kind of expand on that and talk through them.
Mine's on its way.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. No need to apologize here. But I did see Erin, yours, and I saw Renee, yours. Renee, yours, like, yes, like that. Like, I'm looking at those brand values, I'm like, check, check, check. It's so good. Are you, and I love that emerald, like I love that color name too, even though that's
I'm a Taurus in May, so and I love the color. Like green is so my color, but I'm like,
Yes.
lime green is not right for this vibe.
Okay, I love that you brought that up actually, because I'm very into astrology. Does not have to play into this. Like, if you're not into it, you're not into it. That's cool. But I do think that can come into play too. And the book that I recommended, Color, Form, and Magic, actually ties in certain colors to different astrological seasons. So that's something to think about, right? Like, when it comes to murals, I paint a lot of outdoor murals, which means I'm painting in the spring and the fall. That could have come into my colors when I was thinking about things, right? Like where I'm very pushing the spring and the fall colors, which can resonate with different astrological seasons. So yeah, that's very cool. I like it. And it's very like, you wrote tribalistic art. Is that the name of your company?
That is actually the company that me and my boyfriend do collaborative art under.
Cool.
So we do Tribalistic Art together, and then Miss Renee Originals, which is a terrible name, but I had to make something. Is
Yeah.
is when I just make art by myself.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Let me share. Okay. So here I think I can click into it. Yeah. Also, this is a really good example of culture coming into play, right? Like tribal, like different, like these are things that we get to consider. Okay, so now we have errands, and brand values are expressive, gifted, vibrant, introspective, bubbly. I think this hits the mark. And I think that you can come up with really fun names. When you were thinking about these, yeah, go ahead, turn on your.
I did. We have Grounded Green. We have Vibrant Tangerine, Fair Pink, Bubblegum Sky, and Crimson Purple.
I love that. Were you envisioning some of these like working together? So like with
Yeah.
text? Yeah.
I actually got inspired by an image. I wonder if I can upload that as
Yeah,
well.
please do.
But I got inspired by an image, and I don't know how to upload a second.
You might
I
be
don't know
able to
if you
edit.
have it. Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea.
Edit, or you can just upload it
Yeah.
at the
Got it.
end.
Okay. Okay, then I'll just, how did oh, there it is. I wasn't seeing it. Anyway, I was inspired by a bohemian
Ooh,
Art Deco.
okay.
And when I saw these bohemian color palettes, I was like, oh, okay. I'm something similar to this.
Yeah. And something else to think about here, something that I really like to do, if you have these foundational colors and you're like, I think I'm going to use most of these, you can do a darker or a lighter shade of each of these. And that can kind of help you create, kind of build that depth, right? Like, and when I'm looking at these two, I see the moody and I see the bubbly. It's so clear, which is really cool.
Which two?
Oh, just like this one feels very moody to me, but these feel bubbly, right? You got like,
okay.
that tangerine color just immediately brings to mind.
Yeah. I was gravitating towards the tangerine. That was the color that I first saw, and I'm gonna upload it. I'm just gonna upload it.
Okay.
It's the color that I saw in the pen. Color inspo. E. Ainsley. Great. Okay. So it's somewhere in there. There it is.
There we go. Oh.
So I was inspired by that initial background color. I was like, oh, how can I play with this?
Is this your home? No. Okay. It feels it just based off of what you've said, like I could see you living here. This is really cool too. So as I showed you all, you can create kind of like a mood board, a visual inspiration board, a Pinterest board, whatever makes sense for you, and kind of pull colors from there as well. So that could be another method. So you could expand upon this imagery if you wanted to and kind of dive a little bit deeper. And something we're not really going to talk about today, but things that you can consider when you're thinking of your marketing and branding is photo style. So you all probably follow photographers, have seen different photography styles. Some is very bright and airy, some is very moody and dark, or bold and poppy. And thinking of like, well, what kind of images am I sharing? What are my filters looking like? You know, am I doing really vintage filters? Am I doing really bright like colors and such like that? And you can really look on almost anyone's Instagram and kind of get a vibe for that. So this could be like good inspiration. Like maybe you have this, like, I'm kind of seeing like a 70s vibe in this photo specifically, which based off of the different styles and genres that you pull in your music, that kind of can come through through here, right? You can have that paired with like maybe some more modern imagery and kind of like how they balance each other out. Okay, so now China's color palette. Gorgeous, creative, intuitive, empathetic, transformative, colorful. Like, yes, I see it, China. I think it's cool. Also, this is like your logo, right?
Yeah, it is. I actually have trouble picking which colors I want to use because I love all the colors, but those are my three main logos that I use for my brand, Your Destiny's Dream.
Okay, yeah. And I could even see you pulling different shades out of this because this is your artwork, right?
Yeah, I drew that.
I could see you like adding different hues or shades, or like maybe there's a red and a gold to kind of like round things out. But I see how it all can work together, which is nice. And then this teal is really pretty.
And you said
Kind of
6
cool.
to 10 colors, so right?
Yeah. Yep. And you can do more, you can do less. It's really, there's so much personal preference. I'm a minimalist, but sometimes I get into a maximalist vibe when it comes to colors. So, again, maybe you have a blue and a teal and a green, and those are kind of all in one family. And then you always pair those with one of your reds, oranges, or golds. And like, that's kind of how that can work too. So sometimes I feel like we can separate our colors into like warm and cool colors and kind of like how those balance too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Kelsey Joyce. Awesome. Where did you pull these from? Was this an image on Pinterest?
Just the internet.
Okay, cool. Because I was like, what, did you do this quickly? Like this?
No.
Yeah, tell us about what are your brand values?
They are community, creativity, joyfulness, color, freedom, fantasy, artsy, happy, design.
Love it. Okay, I feel like these colors feel very balanced. I can see how they work together. Even if I don't know if you're planning to do the gradients, but like the gradients could totally work for your style of work. And I feel like they feel all in the same hue, like all in the same tone, which seems like it really like represents your brand values, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions or anything you want to like talk about with those, or do you feel good?
I mean, I'm a little iffy with the orange, but I feel like I need another darker, poppier color because I love yellow, but I don't want to put yellow on everything. I know a lot of companies use yellow, but then I was afraid that if someone just saw these colors, it looks a bit like a tropical smoothie place. Yeah, so I was trying to figure out to bring in pink. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all about how you use them too, right? Like, you're not going to have a picture of a smoothie, so it's not going to feel like a smoothie place.
Yeah.
And then I would encourage you to, if these 5 work, but like as you start to play around with your social media and such, like maybe you need a few more like super darks or neutrals, or just other hues so that they work with one another. One thing that I do as well that might be helpful for everyone is I actually create an image. I don't know if I have an example of it, but essentially I create an image and then I write a phrase. So I just might just say like, this is a phrase, right? And I do it in my brand font, and then I put it on top of every single color in every single color. So then I can see the contrast there. And there's a lot of like contrast websites for web, specifically for social media, to make sure that it's readable and accessible. Accessibility is super important for those who are like more visually impaired. So making sure that those colors stand out and that they're easy to read. So that could be something that you play around with too, to make sure that you are having enough contrast so that it's legible. Because legibility is one that I probably don't talk enough about, but it is it is part of that. Okay, so now we have, oh my gosh, we have the author. So the vibes I'm seeing: dreamy, surrealistic, vibrant, soul, introspective. And this is the inspiration, which is gorgeous. And then this is the color palette, which is really nice. I'm loving I don't think I would pair these colors together, but they work. And I can see how, just like how you have these worms and then you have this like very nice, like grounded blue. And I could see again, so like how these are tone on tone, I could see you adding a few more if you needed to, but again, playing around with that contrast. But this is really pretty. And like, I'm not getting McDonald's vibes, even though I literally see these two together. Like, it just feels very, it feels like that's surreal. Like I love it. It's gorgeous. So, all right, let's go back to our presentation. Does anyone have any more questions before we move on to fonts and wrap this up? Nope, we good? Okay. If anyone has any questions, again, you all know you can just pop them in the chat. Okay, so here are those favorite books about color. We do have those in the Padlet, and then we also put the links in the chat. So if you all want to dive into those, you are welcome to. So now we're going to move on to fonts, and we have about a half hour left. So I'm going to leave a little bit of time for questions. This part can be a little bit more nuanced. So as a graphic designer who has studied typography, right, and I've worked with a lot of fonts, I'm going to have a very different way of approaching this than someone who has never worked with those. So I just want to let you all know that, like, however makes sense for you is how makes sense for you. Like, do not think that you know, these need to be perfect. I think I've said this a few times, but I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks, and then I'm going to show you some examples, and then we'll take about 15 minutes to kind of search around for fonts and see what you all come up with, and then we'll kind of close out this workshop. So you want to choose at least 2 different fonts that feel really good paired together. So one for titles and larger copy, and then one for smaller body copy. So is everyone kind of familiar with that? So basically we're looking at, because again, I think sometimes my language can be very rooted in my industry. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. So we're looking for like headline, title type fonts, and then one for all of that other copy that you have. And I want you to remember that you can have different weights. So, you know, bold versus italic versus a regular versus a medium. I like to choose really versatile fonts for my body copy so that I have that range, and not every single font or typography has all of those things. So that's something to consider and to look for. And then you can always add a few additional ones for call outs and highlighted information to kind of play around with hierarchy. I'm going to show you now a few different resources, and then I'm going to show you an example, and we can kind of go back and forth. So, okay. The first is Google Fonts. So I'm going to throw all of these in the chat. Google Fonts are fantastic because they are free and they are available on websites, most websites. And they also are web friendly, which is something that is like a whole other conversation of like print friendly versus web friendly. We don't have to get into that nitty gritty right now, but these are great because, you know, if you're using Squarespace, Wix, whatever you're using for your website, these are already preloaded in there, most likely, or it's very easy to kind of put that code in there. One thing I want to mention is that for me personally, I do buy fonts because that makes sense for me as a graphic designer. I don't usually encourage someone to do that unless they're like a larger agency. Fonts can be really, really expensive. You can also, though, of course, buy some, like Creative Market has some for like $20, $30. But the thing about that is that a lot of times you cannot put them on your website. You can use them for your social media graphics, but again, you might have to input them like into Canva, or if you have Adobe, like there are different methods there. So just kind of thinking about like, what's the easiest route? Because there are a lot of, there's a lot of variety in the free web-friendly department. But if you are looking for something that's a little bit more unique, just know that that kind of brings its own challenges, even if it's worth it. So Google Fonts are great. What's really cool is that you can do different categories. So I'm going to kind of quickly go over what these are in case you are not familiar. So a serif font is like Times New Roman. So Times New Roman has like little feet on it. It has those little like it's not just a straight line for an L, right? It has like little feet on it. Those are called serifs. And I can kind of actually show you. So just serifs, you can see that they have the little, it's not just the main letter, you have these like little accents. A sans serif does not have those. These are super legible. This is definitely preferred for most websites and social media and what a lot of people end up using more and more. But I think there is a lot of really cool serifs out there. Serifs are having a moment right now. If you follow any graphic designers, they've like been very in. Both are legible, but this one is probably going to be a little bit easier for websites. But I typically like to have a serif and a sans serif. So that's something to consider. Display would be really good for, display is usually like something where you only have one weight. And what that means is like, this is the only thing that you can do with this font. You can't make this bolder, you can't make this italicized. So those are great for like call to actions or highlighted text or like maybe a quote if you're sharing that. Handwriting is like going to be your script. Some of these can be really good and some of them can be very overused. So something to consider for that. And monospace is like a typewriter. So that might work for your brand. That might not work for your brand, but that's something to consider as well. So that is Google Fonts. You can also use Adobe fonts if you have Adobe programs. So this is really nice because it's automatically preloaded. I'm going to guess that probably none of you have that because why would you? You're not going to pay for software, but this is another thing to think about. And they have a few more very specific tags. So like geometric is going to be really like even. So all of the letters are similarly spaced, similarly sized. Again, you can see how like nerdy this can get really quickly. And then fonts.com. So when you browse, I will put this link in here. You can do a price. So you can be like, I want to pay, you know, a cheap amount for a font. Cool. Or you could just have it for free. And again, it has all these different types of things. You can also sort in different ways. You can make sure that it's super bold. Like this is like a really common font that has been out and about for a while, and it's a sans serif, and that could be really nice for different things. But this is actually, I think this is a free font. It should be free. Sometimes only certain weights are free. So like, yeah. So when you are looking like this regular demo, one thing to note is that if it says demo, it is usually not allowed to be used for businesses. Font licensing is a whole other world. So just kind of thinking about that, you know, it might not make sense for you to buy a whole font family because this is a couple $100. But you know, if you just want one for a display, maybe you pay $30 to do that. Again, Creative Market is another one that I like to use, and they do have like free fonts. So if that is something, I will put that in the chat as well. And they have usually cheaper fonts, but this could be kind of fun to search around for. Just know that sometimes you'll only get like one of the weights, especially if they're from like different font foundries. So again, this is a whole world here. Good question. So yes, defont.com is great. I find that sometimes they don't have like, I think that they can work. I think that they don't have the same like breadth of like the same variety as some of like Google fonts and stuff like that. And sometimes their files they're not enough. So sometimes they won't include numbers, or they won't include punctuation, which those things are very important when you are typing words and using them for social media graphics. So that's something to think about. And a lot of these are also free for personal use only. So that is, again, like where it can kind of get tricky. For the most part, you know, you can get away with it, but there is a risk associated with that. And, you know, the freer, the better. So I would say Google Fonts is probably going to be your best option based off of everything, because you can really, you can get, you know, an entire thing from it. So like here, Montserrat is a really common one. You can make it look really cool too. You know, you don't have to, just because it's very popular doesn't mean anything. What's nice about this is that it has all of these different weights. So that's, again, really nice for website. That's really nice for social media. And I'm going to show you an example of a, let me go back to my presentation. So here's an example of an Instagram graphic that I have created using my new brand fonts for White Coffee Creative. So you can see that I have this headline. This is my brand font. So this is my actual like logo font, where I'm kind of using it exclusively for my logo and then these purposes. That is something to consider as well. And then I use Poppins for my main body copy. So Poppins is actually a really popular font, but it worked for what I was doing. And when it's popular, it also means that it is, it's legible, right? Like it's popular for a reason. And me using this and the colors that I use means that like, you're not really gonna notice that it's the same. So it doesn't matter if it's used in everywhere, if it makes sense and it works. The biggest thing with typography is legibility. So my call to action is Rocka and Billy is what it's called. And you've probably seen it throughout this presentation. That one sometimes can be a little bit harder to read, especially for, you know, something else that I've learned by doing these presentations is like people who have dyslexia, that sometimes script and certain types of fonts can be just really hard to read. It just can like feel jumbled. So that's something to consider. I really like the script nature of it. It mimics some of my like scripts that I have drawn for murals. And it's nice for like smaller sections of text. And then I have this fun, like it's called a warped text where I just have like some different phrases. And that's in a different font for me just because of how that looked when it was on this kind of curvy accent. So no worries, Melvin. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget that you can catch the recording on this too. So all of that stuff. Yes, great question, Erin. How can we make sure our fonts are good for screen readers? I will get into that in a second. But you can kind of see like how this all works together. So this is really after you get your fonts, after you get your colors, I would start experimenting in wherever you plan to create your social graphics, and then you can play around with different fonts. And that can be kind of fun. But again, it's just creating that consistency. So you're like, okay, these are the fonts that I'm always going to use so that every single post doesn't look drastically different. Okay, so let me, there are some really good websites out there for accessibility and making sure. Let me, hold on. I'm just doing some research. I know I have the website somewhere. Well, here, so you can do some research. If I end up finding the specific link, I will let you all know, but there are some where you can like just kind of upload a photo and check it. But here's one for you, like literally typing in your website and making sure that the colors and the contrast work. I mean, there's a lot of them out here. Yeah, we're not going there. But yeah, if I find some, I will definitely let you know. So uses screen readers. They're awesome. Oh, I see. Sorry, I may have misunderstood that question. Screen readers. Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually don't know. So if you find out, please let me know because I would love to understand that a little bit more. But I'm going to assume that it is contrast. So like, see how like white on blue is like pretty easy to read, like generally lighter colors on darker colors or vice versa. When you think about legibility, a really good example is to think of street signs. So like a stop sign, a caution sign, like those are colors that really stand out to people, no matter if they're colorblind, right? Like if like it is meant to be super, super legible. So that can kind of inspire some of that. And then picking fonts for other languages. That is not something that I have any experience with. I have definitely had people, I think like translating and designing documents and designing things in other languages is a whole other skill. Because I don't speak any other languages, like I haven't like done that. But again, if you find that, please let me know. I would say though, too, like if you are fluent in that font, then it would also just kind of be you looking at it and be like, okay, does this work? Does this actually look good? All those kinds of things. So let's take, I've given you a lot of information. We have about 15 minutes left, and I want to honor the 11 o'clock time. So why don't we just take 5 minutes for everyone to kind of look through some fonts, see if they pick any. The biggest thing with fonts is that you can like really look at them, take your time with them, and then again, you do not have to decide today on this call, but just kind of take some time looking into them. Maybe we can put on some music again, Renee. And then if anyone has any questions or anything that they want to share, drop them in the chat or drop them in the Padlet. And we'll take the next 5 minutes. So let's say we'll stop at 10:50 and we'll finish up the presentation and answer any last minute questions. All right. So how was that for everyone? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, good, good. Okay, so that is a wrap. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. If you ever want to share anything after this workshop with me or with the group, you can put it in the Padlet, or you can send it to me on Instagram. I would love to see it at White Coffee Creative Co. or at The Colorful Jess. And I just want to remind you, like, really sit with what you've created today and make sure it works for your brand. The goal is to have a solid set of brand values, a good color palette, and a selection of fonts that you love and will work well for the next few years across your marketing. So, like, if you need more time, do not rush through this. Like, sit with it for the next maybe 1 to 2 weeks and be like, yes, I absolutely love this. This totally works for my strategy. Or maybe you need to tweak it. There's absolutely no rush. And then as a really fun offer, you all are going to get a virtual goodie bag from this week. But I wanted to share that for my giveaway, I am booking free brand audits. So all you have to do is send me an email at jess@whitecoffeecreative.com with the subject brand audit, all caps. And we'll schedule a 60-minute Zoom call to go over your brand guide if you have one, what's working, what's not, as well as some suggestions for next steps to create more cohesion for your brand so you can build recognition and create those deeper connections. And if you are interested in getting your branding done, I offer that. And that could be a follow-up to this. However, you know, based off of what you're looking for, what you need, your style, all those things, I also know a few other people and can kind of point you in the right direction. So I'm always happy to share additional resources for that. And then here are my socials and my emails and my website. I would love to stay connected with you all. And thank you so much for being here. So I will stop sharing now. And then Saz dropped the virtual goodie bag in the chat for you all to check out. But yeah, we're here for questions as well and to wrap it up.
There's a really good one in the chat from Operation Arts, and
Yes.
it's how do you pair your fonts? How do you know what goes together or what doesn't?
Okay, yeah, that is a great question. There are so many articles online that go more into depth than this. We could probably have a half-hour conversation about just this. I typically like to make sure that they just feel good together. So if you were looking at my example, like, you can kind of see this balance between like bold and non-bold. Another really easy one to do is like choosing a serif and a sans serif. So remember, the serif has the little feet, the sans serif does not. But also kind of thinking of the style. So if you have a really elegant font, maybe you want a plainer, more simple, like for body copy. But again, it's like, it's kind of like matching the styles and how they feel and how they come across, and then how you're using them. Hopefully that gives like a little quick one. But literally, if you type in like how do you like pair fonts, you will find so many resources. Oh, I think you're muted.
That's so exciting. Good answer. And
Yes.
there's another question from Renee. How many fonts are acceptable for one image? What is it too much? Yeah.
Yes. I have opinions. That doesn't mean you have to agree with my opinions. I would say typically 3 to 4. So if you have more than 4 different fonts going on, it can get a little hectic. It also depends how you're using them, right? So like, I would say for the most part, intro and body copy should all be one font, but it could be different weights. But you don't want to have like 10 different weights in there either. You don't want to have one sentence that's semi-bold, one sentence that's super bold, one sentence that's italicized, one sentence that's regular. So you want to think about both with weights and types of fonts, sticking to 3 to 4. And that would really be like headlines, body, call out, or like some like information on the bottom. How can I get started on a brand guide, or did I miss this? I didn't really talk about that. That is a super in-depth thing, but you can, if you look up brand guide on Pinterest, they come in such a wide variety. So you can do just like a 1-page thing where you're like, here are my logos, here are my colors, here are my fonts, and it's a quick reference. Or you can work with a brand designer to really like dive into that. You can buy templates. Like I'm sure there are templates on Canva. There's probably templates on Creative Market to create a brand guide. There's like a lot of stuff out there. But I would say for where you're at and kind of what, like if you are a beginner, you can just start with a one sheet thing where it has like logo, fonts, maybe some elements, maybe some colors. If you have any specific background, so again, Erin, you mentioned like textural glass, like finding that image and then you can use that as a background on things for consistency. Yeah. Yay.
Also schedule, Erin, schedule that brand audit with Jess. I feel like you guys could come up with some amazing solutions for your brand. And I think, there could be a lot to gain from a conversation outside of this workshop. So yeah, feel free to use that resource.
Yes, please. Do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am super happy to share, talk, do all the things.
Real quick, I was just wondering, when you're working with clients, if they have more of like a artsy fartsy kind of business, do you ever recommend that they go a little bit more serious? Because the fonts I was looking at, I was either really attracted to the super fun ones that were a little bit out there, or the very just plain and bold, simple ones. And I feel like since my product is something that is so creative, to be taken seriously, I either feel forced to go the more serious route, but then my heart always just wants to throw color everywhere and have the fun fonts.
I, again, have lots of opinions on this, and I feel like this could be a really good conversation around what are you trying to prove, right? Like, where's your self-worth tied into some of this too? So if you are artsy fartsy and your things are getting purchased and people are liking what they see and they resonate with your brand, keep it colorful, keep it super funky, keep it fun, like keep it expressive. If you feel like maybe based off of your price point or your clientele or all these things that they need something that's almost like this grounded kind of simpler presence, and then you have this beautiful like breathtaking artwork, that's okay too. But I think it's like kind of giving a feel of, what do you really want to do? And then what makes sense based off of your audience and what you're trying to sell. So that's like a roundabout question, I answer to that. But we can definitely, again, you can reach out to me. We can talk about it more in depth. That could be really fun. But it really, in terms of my clients, like it really just depends on who they are. Everyone's so different. Everyone's brand is so different. Everyone's business is so different. Clientele is different. Like, we all have something to add. And I think either way could be the best option for you.
We have one more question if there's time, and then we're going to wrap this thing up.
Okay.
That question, sorry.
No,
any advice on having different entities and wanting to link them all under one umbrella, but allowing them to individually have their own style?
Yes. Okay. So I struggle with that because I have two separate businesses, and really combining those was a challenge, even as a brand designer, even as someone who is really fluent in some of this stuff. I would say kind of everything that we talked about here. So maybe your tie-in is brand values or messaging. Maybe it is creating an umbrella company, and then it's almost like different offers underneath, and that has a consistent brand. And then you could use the same fonts, or maybe there's a color that ties it together. One of the things that I did was, before I changed my brand, I have the colorful Jess from White Coffee Creative. So White Coffee Creative is like my main thing. It's what a lot of people know me as. And then I just used that logo option so that people are like, oh, I connect it. And it was literally my logo of White Coffee Creative underneath. So I use similar fonts. In the beginning, I was also using similar colors. Now they feel much more separate, and I'm okay with that. But that's something to, like, those are all different options. Yeah.
Great question. We are out of time, and I am so happy to see the level of engagement today with this session. For anyone looking at this after, the live session in the recording, please take advantage of all the resources that Jess has listed for us today. I want to congratulate those that have been here for the entire week or have made multiple sessions, give yourself a round of applause for getting through this amazing week, Global Entrepreneurship Week 2022. A few things for you guys. We're going to put in the virtual goodie bag once more into the chat. Please take advantage of those resources. And for anyone here that has made multiple sessions or has attended multiple sessions, you also are gifted a session with me. So I'm going to put an application in the chat for that. And in that application, you can list an area of your business that you want to focus on. And I come up with execution-based strategies for you to level up. So it's really hands-on. It's a great way for us to just get in, target a specific area that you want to focus on in your creative business. And of course, take advantage of that print-packed form. I think, Kelsey, even sculptors, I can find a place for you too. So all art forums are welcome. Please sign up, and hopefully we can find a home for you. I'm going to give it to Renee and China. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, everybody. So with that, we are concluding our final event in our week of Global Entrepreneurship Week Arts. We really want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for coming and learning with us and growing with us and working together to just become better, more capable and artists and business people. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. China, anything you want to add?
Yes, I just want to add, let's continue this conversation. We have a group called Operation Arts. We'll put it in the chat. And Saz also has a group called Lost in Creation. So let's keep making art, and hopefully we'll see everyone next year for GEWARTS 2023.
Woo! Thank you, everybody. Take care. Stay well.
Thank you so much.
Talk soon.
See you
Bye.
soon.